La 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 la, wait till I get my money right. I had a dream I could buy my way to heaven. When I awoke, I spent that on a necklace. I told God I'll be back in a second. Man, it's so hard not to act reckless. To whom much is given, much is tested. Get arrested, guess until he get the message.
What's going on, everybody? And I'm back, finally to talk about some baseball. Baseball Banter has been gone for months. My good buddy Mike, he started working, and with me having a full-time job as well, we just haven't been able to do this series and consistently do it like we were doing before. We were doing it every week. But something, I'm bringing it back. I've been doing football podcasts on here, and now I'm going to start doing my baseball podcast again, since there's nothing to talk about for the Tigers, that's for sure. And, so yeah, Baseball Banter's back, and let's jump right on into it. This week, the biggest story in baseball by far is Matt Harvey. Earlier this week, Scott Boras comes out and says that the Mets have to shut down Matt Harvey at 180 innings pitched because he's 17 months removed from Tommy John surgery, and this was an innings limit set by Dr. James Andrews. It's a non-negotiable type deal. It has to be done at 180 innings. Well, Sandy Alderson comes out, the Mets general manager, and goes, look, we discussed this with Matt Harvey earlier in the year. And as a matter of fact, I was the one at 140 innings that was talking to Matt Harvey, letting him know about the potential innings cap, just so we were all on the same page, pretty much. And these aren't the exact quotes, paraphrasing the conversations. So he says that Dr. James Andrews never said such thing about Matt Harvey having to be done pitching at 180 innings. Well, Matt Harvey comes out and says, in fact, yes, Dr. James Andrews said 180 innings is the magic number. It wasn't a set cap limit. And he was defending Scott Boras' first comments, started protecting him, says this is the reason why I hired Dr. James Andrews, and I have Scott Boras as my agent. Guys to protect me and help me pitch longer in my career, for my, to better my health, and, for his ultimate interest for money, because Scott Boras is, the king of that, getting a ginormous contracts for players that don't deserve it. Not that Matt Harvey, is going to be that player in 3 years that gets paid over $200 million. So nonetheless, now all of a sudden, at 166 and a third innings pitched, less than 14 innings away from this magic 180 caps inning, he's coming out and now there's questions of whether he's going to pitch in the postseason, even though an article just came out saying that he is going to pitch in the postseason. But what blows my mind about this is all of a sudden when Scott Boras weasels his little nose and all of a sudden it becomes a big deal about this 180 innings cap, this whole limit. But how can you be a competitor, call yourself the Dark Knight, do this ESPN 30 for 30 or E60 stuff, a whole thing when he came back, talk about how he wants the ball, how he wants to be a competitor. As a matter of fact, 3 weeks ago he did an interview and said he didn't even know if he was on an innings limit. Now all of a sudden, Dr. James Andrews told you when you came back 180 innings was this magic number, and Scott Boras is out here running his mouth about it, and then Sandy Alderson sitting there holding the bag like, guys, I was talking about this when you were at 140 innings pitched. Now all of a sudden, we're but 3 weeks from the playoffs. We got a 4-game lead over the Nats, even though the Nats are coming on strong here. We possess the best rotation, arguably the best rotation in baseball. They just got back Steven Matz. Noah Syndergaard can't win on the road, but he's been an absolute stud. You got Jacob deGrom, who you can make a case is better than Matt Harvey, even though Matt Harvey is looked upon as the ace of the staff. To go along with Matt Harvey, you got Bartolo Colon, who just pitched, became the oldest pitcher ever to can pitch a complete game shutout. And you still got Johnese. They have a dominant pitching staff. And what blows my mind about all this is the Mets tried to go to a 6-man rotation. Matt Harvey complained about it. The Mets have done everything they possibly can to watch this kid's innings. They've skipped starts on him this year a couple of times to limit his innings, as they've done for other guys. They're skipping Noah Syndergaard. They've skipped Noah Syndergaard starts, and they've skipped Jacob deGrom starts. They've watched for that. They've tried to implement a 6-man rotation. Matt Harvey didn't want to go to that. And now for all of a sudden, when your team is this close to the playoffs, you haven't done anything since 2006. 2006 was the last time you won a division and or went to the playoffs. Since then, your team was a joke. For Christ's sake, they looked upon as Jason Bay was a guy that was once looked upon when they signed him out of the Red Sox to be a franchise cornerstone to help lead you back to the playoffs. I mean, since 2006, think about this. You've had guys like, John Maine, Pedro Martinez, no more Carlos Delgado, no more Carlos Beltran, no more Jose Reyes. I mean, this team, just consistently awful bullpens, teams that are, just consistently decimated by injuries, and they've gone through merry-go-rounds at shortstop and second base there for a little while, and the outfield, and now you get a team that has just this plethora of young pitching, and it's just quality pitching, and all of a sudden you're going to come out with this innings cap, and you were told that it was a soft cap by your general manager at the start of the year, that 180 innings is what they want to shoot for, but it's a soft cap. Come on now. When the Nats shut down Steven Strasburger in 2012 after 153 innings pitched, he complained about it. He wanted the ball. He was a competitor. He wanted to be in the playoffs. You know what happened? The Nats got ousted. Now, the Nats, that 12 team wasn't nearly as good as this Mets 15 team with this rotation. The Nats rotation was okay in 12. I mean, they had a good team, but they weren't even on the level of this Mets team. And I just find this absolutely disgusting. A man can sit up here, call himself the Dark Knight, do an ESPN documentary about how he wants the ball, about, how he's just this competitor, and then even question your innings limit. And then Doc couldn't come out and just absolutely reamed Matt Harvey. He couldn't believe it. He was talking about he couldn't dream of him or Ron Darling doing something like this back in the 86 team, coming out and saying, watching their innings. Doc Gooden pitched 276 innings as a 20-year-old. His first 3 years in the league, he averaged 248 innings. This is a guy that was a 6'2 guy, maybe weighed 165 pounds wet. Matt Harvey is a 26-year-old man beast, 6'4", 220 pounds, 17 months removed from Tommy John, and the Mets have done everything they possibly can to make this kid come back and give him every opportunity to watch his innings pitched, to make sure that they're doing what they can to baby him along. I mean, I guess you can't say baby him along, but make sure that they watch his innings and that they're doing everything they can to make sure Harvey comes along and he's good for the foreseeable future. And I thought this was just just a complete atrocity to you're practically turning your back on your teammates, because there's no arguing in this point. The Mets are clearly a better team with Matt Harvey fronting their rotation than without Matt Harvey. I know they got Steven Matz. I know they got Cologne, John Neese, DeGrom, and Syndergaard. But they have to have Harvey fronting that rotation if they're going to win the World Series. So, supposedly he's going to pitch in the playoffs, according to reports. But we'll see in 2 starts when he does touch 180 limits pitched what happens. So, moving on, David Ortiz is reaching his quest. We're pretty close to reaching his quest of hitting 500 home runs. And I wanted to talk about, should David Ortiz be a Hall of Famer? Now, I thought Edgar Martinez should be a Hall of Famer, but everyone goes, well, he was a DH, played DH most of his career, blah, blah. I absolutely hate this argument of should DHs be Hall of Famers or not, because they didn't play both sides of the ball. There is plenty of guys in the Hall of Fame that were god-awful fielders, but they deserve to be in the Hall of Fame because they helped their team out on the defensive side of the ball. So you're telling me Jim Thome, who didn't really touch a mitt, for the last 10 years of his career, he was on the Phillies, and so he had to play first base. But when he came back over to the American League, he was on the White Sox. He didn't hardly ever play first base, and he only played third base for a couple of years. I mean, he was a DH a good chunk of his career. But you're telling me a guy with 600 home runs, you're not going to put him in the Hall of Fame? You're telling me Harmon Killebrew was a Gold Glove first baseman? He was Gil Hodges with the mitt? You're telling me Reggie Jackson was Willie Mays out in right field? These are all guys that are in the Hall of Fame. So you're telling me that someone like Edgar Martinez, who has an award named after him for best DH, shouldn't be in the Hall of Fame, and he's one of the best pure hitters of all time? This is a man who was winning batting titles. You're telling me Frank Thomas, a guy who played a lot of DH, he doesn't deserve to be in the Hall of Fame? Now, I absolutely hate that argument where they say that the DHs don't belong in the Hall of Fame. Because they do. If you have the accumulative stats and you're known for your bat, the relevancy of your defensive statistics should not matter one bit. And that's like, you make the case for Ozzie Smith. Because he was very good with his glove and a mediocre hitter that he's in the Hall of Fame. He won 13 Gold Gloves, so he goes in there. Yet Alan Trammell bested him in every offensive statistic there is. Won a couple of Gold Gloves and Silver Sluggers, near MVP, but he doesn't make it in the Hall of Fame because Ozzie Smith was doing backflips and won 13 Gold Gloves. Well, if you're going to put someone in on Gold Glove standards, where the hell is Keith Hernandez? Why is he not in there? He's got 12 Gold Gloves and a co-MVP to his name. But he's not in there because he wasn't doing backflips and he wasn't friendly with the media. He got in trouble for doing coke, so the writers had spite against him. So they don't vote him in, but Ozzie Smith's in there, an awful hitter. He's only known for his glove. It's both sides of the ball. If a guy is an outstanding hitter and has the cumulative offensive statistics, he deserves to be in the Hall of Fame if he compares with Hall of Famers. I don't care if he didn't play with the glove. It doesn't matter to me. If he was terrible with the glove, I don't blame his manager for DHing him. I want his bat out there. Victor Martinez, I don't think is a Hall of Famer, but I mean, he's, he caught a lot of his career, but he's primarily DH the last 3 years, actually 4 years. And, he's a 300 hitter from both sides of the plate. He's one of the best two-strikes hitters I've ever saw. He's great at fouling off pitches. He gives you a quality at bat just about every single time. Yeah, he's faced some injuries, but, he's known for his stick. And if you ever, try to make a case for his Hall of Fame case just because he DH'd, it just doesn't make sense to me. Now, for the Ortiz thing, I do not think he's a Hall of Famer. Now, here's the reason. You got all these PEDs. This always made me mad. Alex Rodriguez gets absolutely crushed for his PED usage and, how he's a hypocrite. Now, he is all these things. And the moron got caught twice. So, his fault in the long run. But David Ortiz comes out, gets in trouble for that 2003 report, and he's been kind of swept under the rug. Manny Ramirez kind of, I think took a lot of the heat because he was a moron and he was always in the spotlight for the media, especially before the Red Sox traded him, when he was trying to get out of Boston. So I think that kind of took it in him getting caught twice for PEDs. I think that kind of really took a lot of the stress and, the media scrutiny off of Ortiz. But this guy kind of gets swept under the rug, and a lot of people, they're going to sit there and chastise all these guys for taking performance-enhancing drugs, and they shouldn't be in there, like Andy Pettit or something. But Ortiz kind of gets swept underneath there. Let's not kid ourselves, guys. This guy was a dude who was awful with the Minnesota Twins, gets cut, and all of a sudden becomes, an amazing hitter for the last 12. Don't get me wrong. David Ortiz is probably the greatest DH of all time. The man has 500 home runs, and to play the DH is not an easy thing, despite what you might believe. You're sitting on the bench, primarily. That's all you do. You only get to come off the bench to hit. So you're sitting there the entire game trying to keep yourself mentally locked in, mentally focused. Because, I've never really DH'd when I've played softball. I've had to sit on the bench for a couple of innings, if I ever had to rotate out. Let me tell you something. You're coming back out and you haven't saw a pitcher for a couple of bats. Now, mind you, it's a softball, not hardball. I completely get it. It's not an easy thing to do. You haven't saw the pitcher. You don't know what he's going to do. You're not comfortable. I mean, to sit there and all you can think, say you make you just rocket a ball at the bases loaded, 2 outs and gets caught. I've scorched the ball. There was a game in softball once before I learned to take the ball the other way. The infield was playing a rover between shortstop and third, because they were playing me to pull, because I didn't know how to take the ball up. So I had the entire second. You could have flown a jet through the hole they were giving me, but they knew I couldn't take the ball the opposite way. So they had a rover. And I hit the ball, and I ended the game. And that's all I could think about was, man, we were coming back on a rally, and I ended the game with the tying run at second. And that's all you get to think about. You don't get to go back out on the field and, make a spectacular play for redemption. You don't get to go out there and take your mind off something for a little while. You're constant. That's all you get to think about because that's all you do. It's a mental thing. Look at Miguel Cabrera's statistics when he DHs. These stats are awful. It's a hard thing to do. So for guys like Victor Martinez and David Ortiz to come out and, just primarily do nothing, that's it hit, with no use of their glove, other things to take their mind off besides their last at bat. It's an outstanding thing to do. And for Ortiz to have this consistency, I mean, this is another 30 home run season for this guy. Yeah, he started out slow, and his last 5 years, he was a guy that either started off slow or started off like gangbusters, but once he found a stride, he got hot and he just crushed. This year people are like, oh, David Ortiz is done because he started off really slow again, and he's 39. But he came out and he's crushed. I mean, he's got, I think, 31 homers this year. He's been great again from a power standpoint. Not an average standpoint, but from a power standpoint, he's been great again. He's just putting up great numbers. But I don't feel that he's a Hall of Famer. And here's the thing. It's not because he took PEDs. I honestly think guys that took PEDs, they should be in the Hall of Fame, because this is another thing that makes me mad about people in PEDs. First off, the Hall of Fame is already loaded with cheaters. It is. You look at all these guys from the dead ball era. These dudes were all cheating. These guys were dirty players. They were all doing whatever they can to get the competitive advantage. You're telling me guys like Cap Anson are people you want to tell your kids about and you want them to strive to be a racist woman beater? Yeah, kids, here's Cap Anson's plaque. Let me tell you a little bit of backstory about how he would womanize people and beat people and how he was a racist. That's what I want you to strive to be, even though he was, rightly regarded, I think, as the first player ever to get 3,000 hits. And like even Babe Ruth. People put him on the pedestal. He was this amazing man. This is a guy that cheated on his wife, had many lovers all over the place, and was an alcoholic. But when we see Babe Ruth's plaque up on the Hall of Fame, all we think about is 714 home runs and beers and hot dogs and no steroids. So it's a hypocrisy. It's all it is. So there's already cheaters in the Hall of Fame and not great role models. So why not put these guys, when they were taking a substance that was not banned or illegal at the time they were taking it, and Bud Selig-Foley was aware of what was going on. Don't sit here and play like he wasn't. They come off a strike in 94 where baseball nearly dies, attendance falls, and all of a sudden, I think only 8 players or 5 players ever hit 60 home runs in a season, ever going into the 1990s, because you got Babe Ruth, Roger Maris, I think Hank Greenberg got really close to hitting 60 home runs once. Honestly, I think that's it. There's maybe, 3 guys that ever hit 60 home runs coming into the 1990s. And all of a sudden, Sosa and McGuire are popping out 60 consecutive years. One guy 70. And then Barry Bonds, a skinny beanpole kid for a good chunk of his career. An 8-time Gold Glover, steals 500 bases. All of a sudden, this dude is the Incredible Hulk, and he's popping out 73? Come on now. You're going to sit here as a commissioner going, well, these guys, just their trading methods are a lot better, and, they take care of their bodies more, and, the ball's a little bit more juiced up maybe then. Come on now. Don't sit here and play stupid. They were making so much money off it. The home run chase in 98 was I remember that as a kid, was one of the biggest things on the news. Who was going to break Maris's record first? Sosa or McGuire. I mean, this was putting people's butts in the stands. People wanted to see it. And everyone was cheering for him. People who dislike this video for what I say were the same people back then going with their Sammy Sosa jerseys, jumping up in the air and doing this stuff after he hit home runs. And they were the same ones cheering for Barry Bonds when he hit 7, was breaking on Willie Mays, surpassing Willie Mays and surpassed, Hank Aaron and Babe Ruth. And these were the same people that had their 25 Mark McGuire Cardinal jerseys on. So don't sit here and chastise these players and then say they can't be in the Hall of Fame because you're going to say PEDs and all this stuff. And here's another thing. The pitchers were also on PEDs. They were just leveling the playing field. That's all they were doing. So hitters, because they were taking PEDs, none of the pitchers get talked about. They were taking PEDs, so it was okay for those guys to do it, but not the hitters. So, there's probably pitchers in the Hall of Fame, maybe, that they took steroids. Or how about the guys in the 80s that were all hopped up on coke? Or how about all these players over the last 60 years that would take greenies? Mickey Mantle took greenies. You ever read Jim Bouton's Ball 4 about all the players that he played with, they popping greenies? And greenies wasn't even a banned substance in the major leagues because greenies is a form of speed until 2005. So now all of a sudden players with PEDs can't be in the Hall of Fame. That is a crock. Roger Clemens was a Hall of Famer before steroids. Barry Bonds was the first 500 guy ever. He was a Hall of Famer before steroids. Now, Sammy Sosa, I don't know about so much, because this was a guy that was an awful player, and all of a sudden he's pelting 60 out of nowhere. Mark McGwire, he's borderline with me. I'd say, he's maybe a Hall of Famer. But David Ortiz is just not for me. And, like I said, I had no problem with the PED part of it, but I kind of wish people would remember a little bit more and stop giving A-Rod so much crap. I think the biggest, and for someone who runs his mouth as much as David Ortiz does, he kind of gets a little bit too much of a pass for my liking is what it is. I don't think he's a Hall of Famer, but I think you need to respect what he does. And the argument for him being a DH, not being a Hall of Famer, is a load of crap. And these people that don't want to put him in based solely on PEDs, that's a load of crap too. So just don't forget those points I made. That's all I got to say. Moving on to playoff talk. I was talking with a buddy the other night at his house, and the American League playoff situation sucks. It really does. The Texas Rangers are a feel-good story. They were a team that started out terrible, got really hot, fell off, got Cole Hamels, got really hot, and all of a sudden they're in the wild card spot. Now, I think the American League playoff situation is Toronto's going to win that division because no one can touch them. I watched the Tigers go to Toronto, and they look like the bench warmers. They had Rob Schneider out there against the Toronto Blue Jays. Bautista killed him. Encarnacion had 4 home runs in 2 days against them. Josh Donaldson murdered them. Troy Tulowitzki hit a home run off him. Kevin Pillar, I think, hit a home run off him. Justice Smoke hit a home run off him. Everyone on that lineup can take you deep. And now they got David Price. R.A. Dickey's pitching amazing. Mark Burley is pitching outstanding. You look at his last couple of months. They're getting back Marcus Stroman. They got Mark Lowe in the back end of that bullpen. Ozuna is pitching outstanding. That team is legit. The Yankees aren't going to catch them. And then the Yankees, Mark Teixeira's hurt. CC Sabathia is coming off the DL, but it's CC Sabathia. It's not 2009. Tanaka's had a pretty okay year. Von Nova's been up and down since his return. Michael Pineda's finally coming back. Luis Severino's been great. I really like him. And Nathan Eovaldi, since he revitalized his split, he's looked good, even though he got hit up against Tampa yesterday. But, A-Rod went through a big slump, even though he's had a couple of home runs the last couple of days. Teixeira, he had I forget what it was either his knee or his shin that he hurt. Steven Drew's had a bit of a resurgence. Didi Gregorius has been great lately. But they're not going to catch Toronto. The American League Central was decided. That was decided 2 months ago. The Royals got that one. And no one else in that division has a shot at making a wild card spot. I'm sorry, Minnesota, you're not winning the second wild card. And the American League West, the Angels are done. This is a team that solely relied on Pujols and Trout hitting bombs. And when they stopped hitting bombs, they fell to earth. They lost C.J. Wilson. Jared Weaver's been hurt. Garrett Richards is about the only stability they got. Hector Santiago's fallen off. Andrew Haney's been up and down. There's been really no consistency. Matt Shoemaker got sent down to the minors, and now he got scratched from his last start. And then, I'm not a huge fan of the Angels' bullpen. And their offense is so thin. It's Trout and Pujols and C.J. Cron. He's been the only reason really why they've done anything because Trout and Pujols have cooled off so much because Trout got hurt. And I think the Houston Astros got this division with how good Scott Kazmer's been. Dallas Keuchel is this, probably top 3 finisher in the Cy Young this year for sure. Mike Fiers pitches a no-hitter. You got Colin McHugh on there, Lance McCullers. I mean, they got a nice rotation. They really do. And, with that bullpen with Tony Sipp and Luke Gregerson and Pat Neshek, I mean, they got a great bullpen. I think they're going to win that division. But the American League playoffs, to me, it's just like, here's Toronto and here's KC. And everyone else is way below them. Just way below them in terms of talent. They don't really stand a chance. Because Toronto, they got a legit ace. They got guys they can back him up with. And if you need to win one game, Toronto can beat you with that one game because they got David Price. And then they can destroy you in hitting. And they can Tulowitzki and Tulo are outstanding defenders. They can beat you with defense. And Goins is a great second baseman. And you got Russell Martin behind the plate. And, their bullpen's good in the back end. And then KC's been struggling as of late because, Johnny Cueto's been, So you got to watch out for that. KC, I just don't like their rotation. Cueto's been getting destroyed since his first 3 starts. They end up moving Jeremy Guthrie into the bullpen because he's that bad. Donovan Ventura's kind of figured it out lately. And then they've had Chris Young in there and Danny Duffy. And it's just all over the place with them. Their rotation is in. But they still got that great back end of the bullpen. But can you really get by for 2 straight years pitching 6-inning games, 5-inning games, because, you know, I know their depth's good, you know. But when you got Chris Medlin in your rotation, you better hope that offense comes to play, which it has. It really has. Moustakas has had a nice year. Hosmer's had a nice year. Lorenzo Cain is a top 10 MVP guy this year. I mean, Alcides Escobar's had a nice year. Omar Infante's been bad, but they got back Alex Gordon. You know, so they got some talent. You know, they've gotten some decent years off the bench from guys like Paulo Orlando too. You can't forget about him. You know, they have Terrence Gorda come off the bench and steal bases for him, and then you got Salvi Perez behind the dish. So I mean, they got players. But how many innings can that bullpen possibly eat? It's not a recipe for success you need guys to go 6-7 innings. You can't just keep running the same 3 dudes out there because eventually they will falter. And they got great guys to lean on. Kelvin Herrera and Wade Davis and Greg Holland, you know, and Ryan Madsen. And, you know, Chris Young will be in there. They got some guys to lean on, but you can't keep doing that every single night. I want to see some legitimacy. I don't want to go, well, I hope my team scores 5 runs in the first 3 innings and my starter goes 5 and gives up 4. That way we can hold on and pray. You know, I want a guy that I know is going out there. I give him a 5-run lead. He gives up 2 runs after 7 innings. And then I can go, boom, hit you with my beast back into the bullpen. You know, kind of thing. And that's how I feel about the Royals. But just to me, it doesn't make the American League playoff scenario interesting. I think Toronto's going to sweep it all. They're going to run through the American League, I think, come playoff time. And they're going to win it easily. But the National League scenario is absolutely outstanding. The Dodgers, they've slumped. But you got Zach Greinke. I think he's got the 5th lowest ERA in the modern era for a starting pitcher. I think he's got a 1.53 ERA. And then Clayton Kershaw, he's on pace to almost strike out 300 hitters this year. He's got 2.20 ERA after starting out awfully. You know, but they're back into the rotation. They can't get anyone to pitch after Zach and Greinke. There was a contest for NBC Sports Talk. It was Zach and someone came up with there was a saying back in the day for the Braves in the mid-'50s. Spawn insane and pray for rain. And someone came up with the saying, Zach and Greinke and the rest are stinky. And it's true. Because, you know, they've had so many starting pitchers. You know, Mike Bolsinger and Chase Anderson. Or not Chase Anderson, but Brett Anderson and Brandon McCarthy. And they lost Hyun-Jin Ryu for the entire year. And Matt Latos and Alex Wood. I mean, they've gone through pitcher after pitcher after pitcher. They just can't find any consistency after Zach and Clayton. And then their bullpen's been kind of up and down too as of late. So... And then, you know, Jock Peterson's fallen off tremendously, and, you know, they've had Kiki Hernandez out there, and Yasmani Grandal hasn't been hitting whatsoever, and, you know, Agon's been good. And then, you know, they got Chase Utley, and then, you know, they just called up Corey Seager, but I don't think Corey Seager's eligible for the postseason due to when they called him up. So, you know, Jimmy Rollins, he hasn't been great this year. You know, so, I mean... It's been, you know, I got questions about the Dodgers too, but with Zach and Clayton, there's a chance they could get up 2-0 on you, tie it, and then beat you. You know, so they're going to let you get back to 2-2, but then they could beat you the next 2. So, but I look at mainly the Centrals in the East. And that NL Central, you know, the Pirates can't beat divisional foes, but they destroy everyone else. You know, and between the pitching staff they possess, that now they're getting back A.J. Burnett, and that bullpen, and that young core group of players they got with McCutchen and Gregory Polanco and Neil Walker and guys like Gung and guys like Francisco Cervelli and Pedro Alvarez. And, you know, they got Mike Morris backing him up. A nice bat to have off the bench. And you got Starling Marte and McCutchen just leading it all off. And then Josh Harrison. And then you got that back end of their bullpen, which is good. And then you got Garrett Cole and A.J. Burnett and Jeff Locke and Francisco Liriano. They're a great squad. Just so well-rounded. Great depth. And then you got the Cardinals where they get just blasted by injuries. And what do? They win. They just win. That's all they do. And they're getting back Randall Grichuk too. And then, you know, you look at the Cubs. 20 games over 500. Chris Bryant blasted a near 500-foot shot this year. If it wasn't for the scoreboard being there, it was 500-plus feet. Because that was way out onto the street if the scoreboard wasn't standing. And then, you know, they've gotten so much contribute, I can't say that word, contributions from their young guys. You know, Kyle Schwarber's got hurt, but he's going to be back. But Miggy Montero's had some big hits. And Anthony Rizzo's having a great year. He's thriving. And Addison Russell, you know, he's now their shortstop. You know, he's had some big hits. And, you know, guys like Sawyer, you know, they got Baez that come off the bench. And, You know, they got Dexter Fowler and Austin Jackson. You know, their bullpen. You know, they added Fernando Rodney and Hector Rondon has done a nice job, you know, lately, and Pedro Strop has done a nice job for them. So, I mean, they're really starting to mold into a quality club. You know, the only thing with me is, you know, the rookies. How are they going to be the first time? You know, and then you got guys in the rotation with Lester and Arrieta and Hamill. That's a filthy three. They've been great. They've been outstanding. You know, they're a quality club. That Central is the best division of baseball. It is. It's a fun division to watch. And then you got the Mets in the East. And my God, Yoenis Cespedes has just been a revelation for their lineup. It's been crazy. He's already got 12 home runs for him. He's been power crazy. You got David Wright back. You know, Wilmer Flores, Daniel Murphy. You know, Lucas Duda is about to be coming back from injury. You know, Michael Gradier's hit better. Granderson's having a great year power-wise. And then, you know, their mid-rotation or their mid-bullpen is kind of, you know, it's not exactly what you want. But, you know, they got guys like Tyler Clippard to give the ball off to Jeurys Familia. You know, but you don't really want to give the ball to, like, Bobby Parnell or Alex Torres or nothing like that. You know, they could really use a guy like Vic Black or Mejia, but he wanted to take steroids again and get caught. But, I mean, that NL playoff, I'm excited. I want it to be October already just to watch the NL playoffs because those quality of teams between Pittsburgh, Chicago, St. Louis, and the Mets, you are going to see some NLCS quality matchups from the word go. And between what the Dodgers can throw at you 1-2, I know what Clayton Kershaw is like in the playoffs. It's going to be an outstanding postseason, and I cannot wait to see it. You know, the NL postseason is far superior to anything the AL is going to provide this year, but you know it's going to be great, and I'm looking forward to it. So, last but not least, we're going to talk about biggest disappointments for me this year. I want to say my biggest disappointing teams on the year are the Washington Nationals. Now, I know the Nationals have faced a lot of adversity this year, you know, but Matt Williams has been an awful manager. He's probably on his way out. This is a guy that's almost as bad as Brad Ausmus, manage a bullpen. You know, they give him Jonathan Papelbon, and they don't use him in any close situations. You know, Drew Storen gets bolted out of the closer role after he's doing good. You know, Rendon's been hurt. You know, their rotation hasn't been nearly as good as it was advertised as people thought it was going to be. You know, Bryce Harper could only carry the load so long. You know, so they've been a big disappointment. And I think the biggest disappointment in the AL, because the NL is the Mets for me, or the Nats for me, and my biggest disappointment in the AL is the Tigers. You know, call me biased because I watch them on a nightly basis. But you got a squad that you were coming in that featured Victor Martinez, Miguel Cabrera, J.D. Martinez, Yoenis Cespedes. You know, Iglesias has had a career year with the stick. You know, Castellanos has hit so much better in the second half. You know, he's shown greatness. And, you know, for this team to be as bad as they were. Now, I came on record saying I saw them either being a third-place team or a first-place team. And my biggest fears happened. They were destroyed by the injury bug. Verlander goes down right away to start the year. Miggy gets hurt. Anibal Sanchez is hurt. Daniel Norris is hurt. You know, now Jose Iglesias is hurt. You know, Kinsler was terrible in the first half, but the biggest thing was their bullpen destroyed him again. And this time, their starting rotation wasn't good enough, and their offense wasn't good enough to mask it long enough to make a postseason run and then get really destroyed in the postseason. So, they're my biggest disappointment in the AL. So, that's all I got for you guys this week for Baseball Banter. I will be back sometime mid-next week to do another video for you guys, to do another baseball podcast. As for Tiger videos, they stink. There you go. That's your Tigers update. They stink, and I don't want to talk about it. I'd rather talk about the rest of the league. So have a good one, guys, and I'll see you next week.